It was supposed to be a happy day. The small living room smelled of cardamom tea and fresh flowers. Soft music played in the background, and the old woman smiled as she adjusted her shawl. It was her birthday. Another year. Another blessing, she told herself. Her son and his wife had promised to visit, and she'd spent the whole morning preparing their favorite dishes. She had no idea that this would be the day everything changed. As the clock struck noon, her son walked in with his wife. He looked confident, proud even, while his wife wore that usual expression, a polite smile that never reached her eyes. The mother greeted them warmly. "You came early," she said, trying to hide the nervous excitement in her voice. "Yes, we thought we'd surprise you," her son replied, placing a wrapped box on the table. The daughter-in-law walked past her without saying much. Her heels clicked on the tile floor, sharp and cold, just like her tone. "I'll help you in the kitchen," she said flatly, but there was no kindness in her words. The mother smiled anyway. She had learned to find peace in silence. She didn't want arguments. She only wanted her son to be happy. The day went smoothly until the afternoon. That's when the tension began. It started small, a comment about the tea being too strong, a frown over the rice being slightly cold. The daughter-in-law's words cut deep, but the old woman swallowed her pride and kept smiling. Her brother, who lived nearby, arrived later with a small gift and a warm laugh. He hugged her, kissed her forehead, and joked, "You're still as young as ever." Everyone chuckled except the daughter-in-law. Dinner was served and the family sat together. The old woman looked around the table and thought, "This is all I ever wanted, just to see everyone together." But beneath the smiles, something was building. Something dark and heavy. After dinner, while cleaning up, the mother accidentally spilled some water on the floor. The daughter-in-law's voice rose sharply. "Can't you be more careful? You almost made me slip!" she snapped. "I'm sorry," the mother said softly, bending down to wipe it. But the younger woman didn't stop. "You always have excuses. You act so helpless all the time." The old woman looked up, hurt in her eyes. She didn't respond. Her silence only made it worse. Suddenly there was a loud slap, a sharp sound that cut through the air. The mother froze. The pain burned across her cheek. The daughter-in-law stood there, her chest heaving, eyes filled with anger. "You needed to learn some respect," she hissed. The son rushed in. For a second, his face showed shock, but then it changed. He looked at his mother, then at his wife, and said something that broke her heart completely. "She's right, Ma. You need to stop making things difficult. My wife didn't mean to hurt you." The room went silent. Even the sound of the ceiling fan seemed distant. The old woman didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, pressing her hand against her cheek. Her heart felt heavy, but she stayed quiet. Her brother, who had seen the whole thing from the doorway, clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Not yet. Not here. He looked at his sister's trembling hands, the bruise already forming near her eye. He turned toward her son, his voice calm but cold. "Do you even hear yourself?" he said quietly. "You're defending the person who just hit your own mother?" The son looked away. "It's not what you think, Uncle. She provoked her." The old woman's brother stepped closer. "Provoked her? You call respect and love provocation now?" The daughter-in-law crossed her arms, unbothered. She needed to know her place. The mother couldn't take it anymore. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Enough. Please, no more fighting. It's my birthday." Her brother looked at her tired eyes, her shaking lips, and something inside him broke. He said nothing more that night, but in his heart, he knew this wasn't the end. He knew the truth needed to come out, and when it did, it would change everything. As the lights dimmed and everyone left, the old woman sat quietly by the window, looking out at the moon. Her eye throbbed, but the pain inside her chest was far worse. She whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." But deep down she knew tomorrow would not be better. Tomorrow would bring truth, and with truth comes change, and it all started on her birthday. The next morning came quietly. The sun peeked through the thin curtains, painting soft gold lines across the small living room. The house felt still, too still, like it was holding its breath after what happened the night before. The old woman sat on the edge of her bed, her hand resting against her swollen eye. The bruise had deepened overnight, turning a dark purple that spread toward her cheek. She pressed a cool cloth against it, wincing at the sting. She didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears didn't change anything. Instead, she whispered a small prayer under her breath. Not for herself, but for peace in her family. Her brother's voice from the previous night still echoed in her mind. "Do you even hear yourself?" he had said to her son. She wanted to believe her son hadn't meant what he said. Maybe he was just trying to keep things calm. Maybe he didn't know how to stand up between his wife and his mother. But deep inside, something told her that wasn't true anymore. She heard footsteps outside her room. It was her son, Ma, he said softly, knocking on the door. "Can I come in?" She nodded without looking up. He stepped inside, holding a tray with a cup of tea. "Here," he said, setting it on the table. "You didn't eat last night?" "Thank you," she replied, her voice gentle but distant. He hesitated before sitting down. His eyes glanced at her bruise, but quickly looked away. "You shouldn't have stood in her way like that," he said after a pause. Her heart sank. "I stood in her way?" He rubbed his forehead. "You know how she is, Ma. She gets angry fast." "You can't talk to her that way." The old woman looked at her son carefully. "I didn't talk to her in any way, Beta. I was cleaning. She shouted at me," he sighed, shaking his head. "You always make her feel unwelcome." "She says you look down on her." She wanted to scream. "How could I look down on the person who hit me in my own house?" But instead, she just said quietly, "I have always treated her as my daughter." He didn't respond. He stood up and said, "Just don't make things worse, Ma. I'll talk to her." The door closed behind him. The silence that followed was louder than words. Later that day, her brother came back. He entered quietly, carrying a small bag of fruits. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her eye and clenched his jaw. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Only when I touch it." He sat down beside her. "You shouldn't stay quiet about this," he said firmly. What she did was wrong. What he said was worse. She looked down at her hands. "He's my son," she said. "If I speak, his marriage will break. And if you don't speak?" her brother asked. "Then your heart will break, again and again." The old woman's lips trembled, but she said nothing. He sighed. "You always protected him, even when he doesn't deserve it." In the afternoon, the daughter-in-law came into the living room. She looked annoyed, holding her phone in one hand. "Your brother is spreading lies about me," she said sharply. "He told his neighbors I hit you. Why would he do that?" The old woman looked up calmly. "Maybe because he saw what happened," the daughter-in-law scoffed. "Oh, please. You tripped over the rug." "Don't twist the story." Her voice grew louder. "Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? Everyone will think I'm some kind of monster." The old woman looked at her quietly. "You didn't need to hit me to prove you're right." For a brief moment, the younger woman froze. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "I did what I had to do," she said coldly. "Maybe now you'll stop interfering in my marriage." Then she turned and left the room, slamming the door behind her. The mother sat back, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. The house felt smaller, heavier. Her brother walked in from the garden, having overheard everything. His face was tight with anger. "She's lying and your son's letting her," he said. "I can't stay silent anymore." The mother reached for his hand. "Please don't make it worse," he shook his head. "Worse? Sister, it's already worse." "She's not just hurting you. She's turning your own son against you." His voice softened. "You raised that boy with everything you had. You worked, you struggled, you gave up your own peace for him. And now look what she's done to him." Tears welled up in the mother's eyes, though she tried to hide them. Her brother continued, "If he won't open his eyes, I will make him. He needs to remember who stood by him when no one else did." The old woman whispered, "Promise me, whatever you do, don't hurt anyone." Just talk. He nodded slowly. I promise. But words can hurt too, and sometimes they're the only way to wake someone up. That evening, the brother left quietly. The sun was setting, and the orange light spilled across the old walls of the house. The mother sat by the window again, watching his figure disappear down the road. Her tea had gone cold, untouched. She didn't know what her brother planned to say or how her son would react. But deep down, she felt something shifting. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the truth coming out. For the first time, she hoped it would. The morning air was cool and quiet. The little neighborhood had just started to wake up, the sound of distant brooms, kettles whistling, and the smell of freshly baked bread drifting in the air. But inside that small house, a storm was waiting to begin. The mother sat in the kitchen, slowly stirring her tea. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her son's face, calm, cold, distant. The memory of his words still hurt more than the bruise on her skin. Her brother had called early that morning. I'm coming over, he said simply. We need to talk, she didn't argue. She knew there was no stopping him now. Around 9 o'clock, her son came into the kitchen. He looked tired, as if sleep had also stayed away from him. Ma, he began carefully, I don't want you to take what happened yesterday too seriously. She didn't mean it. You know how emotional she gets. The mother looked up from her tea. Her voice was quiet but firm. You think it was just emotions? He sighed. You make it sound worse than it was. She hit me, Beta, she said softly. And you told her she was right. He frowned, avoiding her eyes. You were talking down to her again. You do that sometimes. You make her feel small. Her heart ached. Small. I only asked her to lower her voice at the dinner table. Before he could reply, there was a knock on the door. The mother's brother entered, calm, but with a look in his eyes that said he was done being silent. He greeted her kindly, then turned to his nephew. Can we talk? He asked. The son hesitated. Sure, Uncle. What about? The older man took a deep breath and said, About last night. About what I saw. The room grew still. The mother stood quietly near the sink, watching, afraid of what might come next. Her brother's tone was steady, but each word carried weight. I saw your wife raise her hand, he said. I saw her strike your mother. I saw you defend her instead of stopping her. Tell me, does that make you proud? The young man's face tightened. Uncle, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, the brother interrupted sharply. That woman disrespected the person who gave you life. And you stood there and let her. The son's voice rose. You're making it sound like I wanted this to happen. I just didn't want more drama in front of everyone. The older man took a step closer. Drama? That wasn't drama. That was cruelty. Do you think peace comes from silence when someone does wrong? The son clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. You're just taking her side because she's your sister. My sister, the brother said firmly, has spent her entire life taking your side. She protected you when your father walked out. She worked extra hours so you could study. She skipped her own meals so you could eat. And this is how you repay her? The young man looked down. His voice was low now. You don't know what it's like living between two women who never agree. The brother sighed, his anger softening for a moment. Maybe they wouldn't have to fight if you remembered who you are. A son first, a husband second. The room fell quiet again. From the hallway, the daughter-in-law appeared, arms crossed. She had been listening. So now you're all against me? She snapped. You old people love playing victims. Maybe you should ask her what she says behind my back. The mother shook her head. I've never spoken against you, she said gently. Even when I what? The younger woman interrupted. Hit you? Maybe you should stop pretending to be perfect. The brother turned toward her. His voice was calm but cutting. You think strength is about shouting? You think you win by hurting others? She glared at him. You have no right to talk to me like that. Maybe not, he said quietly. But I have the right to defend my sister, especially when her own son won't. Her eyes widened for a moment, then she scoffed. Fine, let's all blame me. I'm the villain here, right? She stormed out of the room, her footsteps echoing through the hall. Silence fell again. The son stood still, staring at the floor. The mother spoke softly. I don't want hatred in this house. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. Her brother looked at her sadly. Peace only comes when truth is faced, sister. Not when it's buried. He turned to his nephew again. You're not a bad man. But you've let fear control you, a fear of losing your wife, fear of conflict. You can't build love on fear. You'll lose both women if you keep doing this. The son looked up finally. There were tears in his eyes, though he tried to hide them. Uncle? I didn't know what to do. His uncle placed a hand on his shoulder. Then start by doing what's right. Apologize to your mother. She doesn't need your excuses. She needs her son back. For a long time, no one said anything. The ticking clock filled the room. The son turned toward his mother. His lips parted as if to speak, but words refused to come. Guilt sat heavy in his chest like a stone. I'm sorry, he whispered finally. The old woman looked at him, not with anger, but with the deep sadness of a heart that had been bruised too many times. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Beta. I forgive you. Her brother exhaled quietly, relief mixed with sorrow, but deep down, all three of them knew forgiveness was only the first step. The real change had yet to come. That evening, as the sky turned orange, the brother sat alone on the veranda. The mother joined him with 2 cups of tea. Do you think things will get better? She asked. He looked at her, then at the horizon. Truth always brings pain first. Then peace. Give it time. She smiled faintly, holding her cup close. Time. Yes. Maybe that's what we need. But in her heart, she knew. Some wounds take longer to heal than others, and this one had only just begun to show its depth. The next few days passed in uneasy quiet. The mother noticed small changes. Her son was softer with her, more careful in his words. He would bring her tea in the morning or ask how she was feeling. But even as he tried, she could see it in his eyes. Guilt was eating him slowly. She wished she could tell him that everything was fine, that forgiveness had wiped away the pain. But deep inside, she knew things were not fine. Words can be forgiven, yes, but actions? They leave shadows that don't fade so easily. The bruise near her eye had begun to heal, yet every time she looked in the mirror, it reminded her of the truth that her own son had stood by while she was hurt. Her brother came by every evening, checking on her like clockwork. He brought fresh vegetables, small sweets, sometimes even her favorite jasmine tea. But mostly he brought strength. How's he behaving? He asked one evening, sitting down on the veranda beside her. Quieter, she said softly. He's trying. And his wife? The mother sighed. She avoids me. Doesn't talk much. I think she's angry that I didn't pretend nothing happened. The brother looked thoughtful. People like her don't like mirrors. You being calm makes her see herself. And that's what she can't stand. The mother smiled faintly. Maybe she'll change. She's young. He shook his head slowly. Maybe, but remember, kindness doesn't mean letting others walk over you. Inside the house, tension grew quietly. The daughter-in-law had stopped making eye contact. When the mother entered a room, she would leave. When the mother tried to speak, she would respond with short, sharp words. One afternoon, the son came home early from work. His wife met him at the door, frustration written all over her face. She's turning you against me, she said before he could even take off his shoes. He sighed. No, she's not. I'm just trying to keep peace. Peace? She snapped. Do you think I can live in peace knowing your family thinks I'm a monster? Even your uncle glares at me like I'm some criminal. You hit her, he said quietly. They saw it. Her voice cracked with anger. I made a mistake. But does that mean everyone gets to treat me like I'm evil? He rubbed his temples. No one's treating you that way. They just need time. She looked at him, eyes full of resentment. And how much time do they need before you choose me completely? He stared at her, speechless. What do you mean? I mean, she said bitterly, as long as your mother is here, you'll never truly be mine. That night after dinner, the son sat with his mother quietly. The air between them was heavy with unspoken things. Ma, he began, I've been thinking, maybe it's better if you stay with Uncle for a while. Just until things cool down, her spoon froze midway. You want me to leave? He looked uncomfortable. Not like that. Just temporarily. She feels awkward. Maybe some space will help. Her heart felt heavy. Space or silence, Beta? Which one are you asking for? He didn't answer. He just stared at his hands. The mother nodded slowly, forcing a gentle smile. If it brings peace, I'll go. She didn't want to, but she could see he was caught in a storm he couldn't handle. The next morning, she packed a small bag, just some clothes, her medicines, and a framed photo of her son as a little boy. She sat on the bed for a while, looking around the room one last time. Every corner held memories. His laughter, his childhood drawings, his first school uniform. Her brother came to pick her up. When he saw the bag, he looked at her in disbelief. You're leaving? She nodded quietly. He asked me to. Says it's for peace. The brother clenched his jaw. Peace for whom? The one who hurt you? Maybe peace for all of us, she said softly. If I stay, she'll keep fighting. If I go, maybe they'll find their balance. He wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't weakness, and it was tired love. At the doorway, her son helped her with the bag. He looked guilty, his voice small. Ma, I'll come visit every few days, she smiled faintly. Don't worry about me. Take care of her. He nodded, eyes red. I'm sorry. She placed her hand on his cheek gently. Love doesn't need sorry, Beta. It needs understanding. Remember that. The daughter-in-law stood in the background, arms crossed, watching. Her face showed no emotion, or maybe she was just hiding it well. The car drove off slowly, leaving behind a quiet house and a broken peace. At her brother's home, the mother felt strange. The place was warm and welcoming, but it wasn't hers. She sat by the window, watching the street outside. Children played, laughter echoing through the lanes. She smiled faintly. Life moved on, no matter what. Her brother brought her tea and sat down beside her. You did what you thought was right, he said. But remember, silence doesn't heal what truth must fix. She nodded, her eyes on the sunset. I know, she whispered. But sometimes silence is the only thing left when words stop working. Her brother didn't reply. He just looked at her, wondering how much pain a heart could hold and still keep beating softly, kindly, like hers. In that quiet moment, the mother realized something. She had left her home, not because she was weak, but because she wanted to protect what little love remained. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Sometimes leaving is just the beginning of being truly seen, and soon, her brother's words, calm, firm, and honest, would reach her son again. And this time, they wouldn't be ignored. Days turned into a quiet routine at her brother's home. The mother helped with small chores, watered the plants, and watched the evenings fade into soft orange skies. Her brother's house was peaceful, but her heart wasn't. Every time the phone rang, she hoped it would be her son, but it rarely was. When he did call, his voice was polite, careful, distant. He would ask, "How are you feeling, Ma?" And she would answer, "I'm fine, Beta." Then silence would follow, heavy and awkward, until one of them found an excuse to end the call. She didn't blame him. He was caught between love and loyalty, but the ache of distance grew with each passing day. Her brother watched her closely. One evening, he placed 2 cups of tea on the table and said, "You miss him?" She smiled weakly. "He's my son. How can I not?" He nodded. "But does he miss you?" She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "I think he does, but maybe his pride won't let him admit it." The brother leaned back, sighing. "Then maybe it's time someone reminds him of what really matters." The mother looked up. "Don't scold him, please. He's already torn inside." "I won't scold," he said. "But sometimes truth is the only medicine that heals." The next day, he visited his nephew's house. The son was surprised to see him. "Uncle, you didn't tell me you were coming," he said, offering a hesitant smile. "I don't need an invitation to see my own nephew," the brother replied, stepping inside. "Besides, we have unfinished business." The daughter-in-law appeared from the kitchen, her expression stiff. "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you," he said politely. "This won't take long." He turned toward his nephew. I came to talk, not to argue. You can listen or not. That's up to you, the son sighed. Uncle, if this is about Ma, please. It is about your mother, the older man interrupted gently, but not in the way you think. He sat down, folded his hands, and spoke slowly. You think peace means silence. You think avoiding conflict keeps a family together, but peace built on injustice doesn't last. It only hides pain until it grows too heavy to carry. The son looked uncomfortable. You don't know how hard it's been for me. I'm trying to balance everything. I know, his uncle said, and I respect that. But balance doesn't mean closing your eyes. It means standing firm on what's right, even when it's hard. The daughter-in-law crossed her arms. You're blaming me again, aren't you? He looked at her kindly. No, I'm just saying, every home has two hearts keeping it alive, one that gives and one that receives. But when one heart stops beating with kindness, the whole home turns cold. She frowned. I've done nothing wrong, the uncle's tone stayed gentle. Maybe you didn't mean to. But anger, when repeated, becomes habit, and habit becomes cruelty, even without realizing it. She looked away, saying nothing. He turned to his nephew again. She's your wife, and that deserves respect. But don't forget, your mother is the reason you even learned what love means. Don't let pride erase the hands that raised you. The room fell silent. The son's eyes grew moist. He whispered, I didn't mean to push her away, Uncle. I just wanted to make my marriage work. His uncle nodded. Marriage doesn't mean choosing one love over another. It means learning to hold both without letting go. For a moment, the son said nothing. Then he asked quietly, How is Ma? She smiles, the uncle said, but her eyes tell the truth. She misses you. The son's throat tightened. He looked at his wife, who stood silently, watching. Her face softened slightly. A flash of guilt passed through her eyes. The uncle stood up. You don't have to fix everything in one day. But remember, silence doesn't heal. Honesty does. Go see her, Beta. Not as a son trying to apologize, but as a son who wants to understand. Then he left, leaving behind a house filled with the echo of truth. That night, the son sat on the balcony alone. The air was still, except for the sound of crickets. He looked at his phone. His mother's contact was on the screen. His thumb hovered over the call button, but he couldn't press it. Memories came rushing back, his childhood laughter, his mother's gentle scolding, her tired hands packing his lunch for school, her smile when he came home late. He had forgotten so many little things while trying to keep peace in a world that had lost its warmth. His wife came out quietly and sat beside him. You're thinking about her, she said softly. He nodded. I hurt her. She hesitated, then said, I was angry that day. I don't even remember why. Maybe I went too far. He turned to her slowly. It's not about going too far. It's about losing respect. She looked down. I didn't mean to make you choose. I just didn't know how to live with her. He sighed. You don't have to love her like I do. Just don't make me ashamed of how I treated her. For the first time, her eyes glistened. Do you think she'll forgive us? She already has, he said quietly. But it's time we go ask her anyway. The next morning, he packed a small bag with some fruits, sweets, and the shawl his mother loved. His wife stood beside him, nervous but quiet. Let's go, he said gently. It's time to bring her home. She nodded. As the car drove away, the morning sun lit up the road ahead, long, winding, and full of hope. Maybe healing wasn't about forgetting what happened. Maybe it was about walking back through the pain together, hand in hand, to where love once began. The road stretched long and quiet beneath the morning sun. The son drove slowly, his hands firm on the steering wheel, but his heart felt anything but steady. Beside him, his wife sat silently, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Neither spoke much. The silence between them carried more meaning than words ever could. It had been 2 weeks since his mother left the house. The days felt emptier, quieter. Even meals didn't taste the same. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Now, as the car moved through the narrow lanes toward his uncle's home, every turn seemed to pull him deeper into his memories. He remembered sitting beside his mother as a child, watching her mend his torn school shirt. She would hum softly while stitching, her hands gentle and patient. No matter how tired she was, she never complained. He swallowed hard. How did I ever let myself forget all that? The car stopped in front of the small house. His wife looked nervous. "Should I come inside?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, if you really want to make things right, you should be with me." She took a deep breath and nodded again. When they reached the door, his uncle opened it with a surprised look. "Well, look who's finally found his way back," he said, his tone calm but not cold. "Uncle," the son began, but the older man raised his hand. "No need for big words. Come in." Inside, the air smelled of fresh tea and home-cooked food. The mother was sitting near the window, knitting quietly. When she looked up and saw them, her hands froze mid-air. For a moment, no one moved. Her son stepped forward. "Ma," he whispered. Her lips trembled, but she smiled faintly. "You came," he nodded, eyes glistening. "I should have come earlier." The uncle quietly excused himself to the garden, leaving them alone. The mother stood up slowly, her eyes never leaving her son's face. He looked older somehow, not in years, but in the way guilt had softened his expression. He moved closer and gently took her hands. "I've been a fool, Ma," he said. "I thought keeping quiet was peace, but it only made everything worse." She touched his face tenderly, her thumb brushing the side of his cheek. "Peace never comes from silence, Beta. It comes from understanding." His eyes filled with tears. "Can you forgive me?" She smiled softly. "I forgave you the moment you asked me to leave. I knew you weren't sending me away because you stopped loving me. You just didn't know what love truly means yet." He lowered his head, unable to speak. Behind him, his wife stood near the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. She hesitated, then slowly stepped forward. "Auntie," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I said terrible things, I acted worse. I don't even know why I was so angry. I think I was jealous of the love you shared with him. I felt like I didn't belong." The mother looked at her quietly for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Child, love isn't something that runs out. A mother's heart can hold everyone if you let it." The younger woman covered her face and cried. The mother walked over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "No one wins when there's hurt in a home," she said. "Let's stop fighting for space and start sharing it." The daughter-in-law nodded through tears. "I will never raise my voice again." "I promise," the mother smiled faintly. "Don't promise me, promise yourself." Anger only burns the one who holds it. For the first time in a long while, the three of them sat together. The son poured tea, his hands shaking slightly. The mother laughed softly. "You still don't know how to pour without spilling, do you?" He chuckled, wiping the drop from the table. Some things never change. They talked for a while, about simple things, food, the garden, how the neighbor's cow had wandered into the yard again. The warmth slowly returned, like the first sun after a storm. When the uncle came back inside, he saw them sitting close, smiling gently. He didn't say a word. He just sat down and joined them, pretending to be annoyed when his tea had gone cold. But deep down, he was smiling too. As evening approached, the son looked at his mother. "Ma, come home with us, please," she hesitated. "Is she ready?" His wife nodded quickly. "Yes, Auntie, I want to start again." "A home isn't a home without you." The mother's eyes softened. "I'll come. But only if both of you promise to keep your hearts open, not just your doors." They both nodded. The uncle smiled, patting his sister's shoulder. "Looks like the truth finally did its job," he said quietly. The mother chuckled. Truth always does, when hearts are ready to listen. The car ride back home felt different this time. The air wasn't heavy anymore. The son drove with one hand while holding his mother's hand with the other. His wife looked out the window, quietly wiping away tears. When they reached the house, the mother stepped inside slowly. The familiar smell of her home wrapped around her like an old blanket. Everything was the same, yet everything felt new. She turned to her son and said softly, "This house doesn't need new walls, Beta. It just needed new hearts." He smiled, his voice thick with emotion. And it finally has them, Ma. That night, for the first time in weeks, laughter filled the house again. No shouting, no silence, just warmth, the kind that only love, forgiveness, and truth can bring. Outside, the moon hung bright and full, shining gently through the window. Inside, 3 hearts, broken once, now mending together, finally found peace. The house felt alive again. It wasn't about new paint or fresh curtains, and it was the feeling in the air. The heaviness that once lingered in every corner had lifted, replaced by something softer, warmer, and peaceful. The mother woke up early as always. She stood by the kitchen window, watching the morning light spill across the floor. Birds chirped outside, and somewhere down the lane, a radio played an old song she used to hum while cooking. She smiled. For the first time in a long time, her smile didn't hide pain. Her son walked into the kitchen, still half asleep, scratching his head. "Good morning, Ma," he mumbled. "Good morning," she replied with a laugh. "You still look like that little boy who used to run from school just to eat mangoes," he grinned. "And you still remember everything." "I remember what's worth remembering," she said softly. The daughter-in-law entered the kitchen, tying her hair back. She looked nervous at first, then spoke gently. "Auntie, would you like me to make breakfast today?" The mother looked at her and smiled. "Of course, Beta. Let's do it together." The younger woman blinked in surprise. "Together?" "Yes," the mother said kindly. "Food tastes better when 2 hearts make it." And so they cooked together. Not perfectly, not quietly, but warmly. There were small laughs, a few mistakes, and light chatter about spices and recipes. The smell of fried onions filled the house, and soon it didn't feel like a kitchen. It felt like a bond being mended one meal at a time. At breakfast, the son watched them with quiet relief. He couldn't believe how different things felt. The same table that had once held silence and tension now held laughter and peace. His mother served him food and said teasingly, "Don't just sit there smiling. Eat before it gets cold," he chuckled. "Yes, Ma," his wife added. "He said the same thing to me yesterday when I forgot to eat." The mother laughed. Then maybe he's finally learning. For a moment, all 3 shared a smile that said more than words ever could. In the afternoon, the mother sat in the garden. The sun was warm and she could hear children playing nearby. Her brother dropped by, as he often did, carrying a small bag of sweets. "You came again?" she teased. He grinned. "What can I say?" "I missed your tea." She poured him a cup, and they sat under the shade of the mango tree. He looked around the garden. The flowers seemed brighter, the air lighter. "Looks like peace finally moved in," he said. The mother nodded. "Yes, it feels different now. Even the silence sounds calm," her brother smiled. "I told you truth brings peace. It just needed time." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "You were right. They're both trying now. She helps me in the kitchen, and he talks to me more. It feels like the old days, almost." Her brother's voice softened. "You've done what most can't, forgive without forgetting. That's real strength," the mother smiled quietly. "Forgiving healed me, not them. I just wanted to stop carrying anger. It was too heavy." Later that evening, the daughter-in-law came to her room with a small folded shawl. "Auntie," she said shyly, "I made this for you." The mother looked at her in surprise. "You made this?" "Yes," she said, blushing slightly. "I watched some videos and learned how to knit." "It's not perfect." The mother unfolded the shawl, soft, colorful, and warm. She ran her fingers over it, touched by the effort. "It's beautiful," she said, tears filling her eyes. "It's not about perfect stitches. It's about the heart that made them." The daughter-in-law smiled faintly. "You taught me that." The mother stood up and wrapped the shawl around her shoulders. "Then maybe you were listening after all." They both laughed softly, and in that laugh, months of pain melted away. That night, the son joined them in the living room. His wife rested her head on his shoulder, and his mother sat nearby, knitting again. The television played softly, an old movie they all liked. The mother looked at her son and said gently, "You've grown quieter these days." He smiled. I'm just learning to listen more, Ma. You were right. Peace doesn't mean silence, it means understanding. She nodded approvingly. That's my boy. The daughter-in-law added, and I'm learning to speak with kindness, not anger. You were right, too, the mother smiled. Then maybe this home finally learned what love really is. Her son looked around the room, at the soft lights, the smell of tea, and the gentle laughter. He realized how close he had come to losing all this just because of pride and silence. He reached out, holding both women's hands. I won't let it fall apart again. I promise. His mother squeezed his hand. Promises are easy. Living them every day, and that's what matters. He nodded, understanding. Outside, the wind moved through the trees softly, brushing against the old walls. The house had seen anger, pain, silence, and now, forgiveness. It stood the same, yet it breathed differently now. Love had found its way back home, step by step, word by word, heart by heart. The mother leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. She could finally rest without worry, knowing the home she built with patience was whole again, and this time it felt stronger than ever. The days began to feel lighter, slower, and full of gentle rhythm. Morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, and the smell of breakfast filled the house again. Laughter, soft and real, returned to the dining table. It wasn't forced anymore. The mother often watched her son and his wife move around the kitchen together. Sometimes they would bump into each other and laugh. Sometimes they worked quietly side by side, like two people learning a new song. Every moment felt like a small step toward something better, not perfect, but peaceful. One morning, while watering the plants in the garden, the mother heard her son calling, Ma, wait! You shouldn't lift that heavy pot. Let me do it, she laughed. Beta, I've been lifting these pots since before you were born. He smiled, taking the pot from her hands anyway. And now I'll do it for you. It's my turn. She watched him, her heart swelling with pride. She didn't need grand apologies or gifts. These little acts said everything. Her daughter-in-law joined them with a tray of tea. You both are always fighting over who will work, she said. Smiling, the mother teased her. Well, if you keep bringing tea like this, we won't fight at all. They all laughed, sipping tea under the morning sun. Over time, the daughter-in-law began spending more time with her. She would ask small questions. How to cook a certain dish, how to keep clothes soft while washing, how to calm a restless mind. The mother answered each question patiently, not as a teacher, but as someone who had once been young and unsure too. One afternoon, while folding clothes, the younger woman spoke softly. Auntie, when I first came here, I felt like I had to prove myself. I thought love meant control, but you never tried to control me. You just stayed kind. The mother smiled gently. Love isn't control, Beta. It's freedom, the kind that makes people want to stay. The younger woman nodded slowly, her eyes soft. I understand that now. From that day on, something changed between them. Their conversations became warmer, their silences more comfortable. The son noticed too. He would often come home and find the two women chatting together on the veranda, sharing laughter over something small. Maybe a story from the past or a silly cooking mistake. One evening, he stood by the door quietly, just listening, his heart filled with gratitude. He realized that love didn't always shout or demand attention. Sometimes it simply stayed, steady, kind, forgiving. Later that night, as they all sat down for dinner, he looked at his wife and mother and said softly, I never knew peace could sound like this. His mother chuckled. That's because peace doesn't make noise. It just feels right. They all smiled. Days turned into weeks, and their bond grew stronger. On weekends, they started visiting the brother, the mother's greatest supporter. He would welcome them with a wide grin, always joking, the happy family finally remembered me. He watched his sister's glow return, her laughter brighter, her steps lighter. You look 10 years younger, he teased one afternoon. She laughed. Maybe forgiveness is the best beauty secret. Her son nodded beside her. Or maybe love is. The brother smiled proudly. Both, he said, and a little bit of truth. One evening, The family gathered on the terrace to watch the sunset. The sky was painted with pink and gold, the air soft and calm. The daughter-in-law leaned on the railing beside her mother-in-law. "You know," she said, "I used to think home was just walls and furniture. But it's really about people, isn't it?" The mother nodded slowly. "Yes, a house is built with hands, but a home is built with hearts." Her words hung in the air, simple yet full of meaning. The son joined them, holding 3 cups of tea. "I think we built a good one," he said quietly. The mother smiled, taking her cup. "We built it together, brick by brick, love, patience, and a few mistakes, too." They all laughed softly. Later that night, the mother sat by the window, knitting again. Her son came to her side. "Ma, I've been thinking, I want to do something special for you." She looked up with a smile. "What's that?" "I want to fix up the old room, the one you used to read in. I'll paint it, put in a new chair, maybe even a little bookshelf. You deserve a space that feels like yours again." Her eyes softened. "Beta, I don't need a room. I already have one, right here," she said, placing her hand over her heart. He chuckled quietly. "You always win these conversations." "That's because I'm your mother," she said with a playful wink. They both laughed, the warmth between them real and unspoken. That night, as everyone went to sleep, the mother sat awake for a while, watching the moonlight touch the floor. She thought of how far they had come, from anger to silence, from silence to truth, and now from truth to peace. She whispered softly to herself, This is what love looks like now. It wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, and that was enough." The days passed softly, one after another. The house had finally found its rhythm. Laughter in the mornings, quiet tea in the evenings, and the smell of fresh food always drifting through the air. The mother's life had grown calm again. She woke early, prayed, watered her plants, and sat on the veranda, watching life move by. The bruises of the past were gone, replaced by something stronger, peace. She often smiled now, not because everything was perfect, but because her heart had learned to forgive, to let go, and to love without expecting anything in return. One evening, she sat at her small writing table. A cool breeze flowed through the half-open window, making the papers flutter. She picked up her pen slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion. She began to write. "My dear son, if you are reading this, it means I am resting now. Do not cry, Beta. I have lived a full life, one filled with love, pain, lessons, and forgiveness. When you were born, I promised to protect you no matter what. I kept that promise even when you hurt me. Because a mother's love doesn't stop when her heart breaks. It just learns to beat differently. You made mistakes, yes, but so did I. Maybe I loved you too much to show you what was right at the right time. Maybe my silence made you believe I could endure everything. But silence is not strength. It is a wound that hides under kindness. You found your way back, and that's what matters. I saw the man I raised return. Kind, gentle, humble. That was enough for me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she continued to write. "To my daughter-in-law, you came into this home carrying your own dreams and fears. I know I wasn't easy to understand, just as you weren't easy for me. We both tried in our own ways and failed in others. But you learned, my dear, you grew. I saw it in your eyes, in your hands when you brought me tea, in your voice when you finally called me Ma without hesitation. Remember, marriage is not about power. It's about patience. Love doesn't demand. It listens. Be gentle with your words even when you are angry. Words can heal or destroy, and the choice is always yours." She paused, taking a deep breath as the pen left a small ink mark on the page. A faint smile touched her lips as she wrote the final part. "And to both of you, home isn't made of walls or things. It's made of hearts that forgive and hands that reach for each other after a fight. Don't let ego live where love wants to stay. Don't let silence take the place of care. Speak kindly, listen deeply, and never forget that family is not about being right. It's about staying together through what's wrong. If one day you feel lost again, just sit by the window when the morning light comes in. You'll feel me there, in the warmth, in the air, in the peace. always with you. She set the pen down and folded the letter neatly. On the envelope, she wrote just one word: love. Then she placed it inside her prayer book, the one she kept on her bedside table. Weeks later, when she quietly passed in her sleep, the house was filled not with cries, but with silence, the kind that holds love, not pain. Her son found the letter while arranging her things. His hands shook as he unfolded it, and by the time he finished reading, his tears had already fallen onto the paper. His wife came beside him, gently taking the letter. Her voice trembled as she read out loud the part that said, "Home isn't made of walls. It's made of hearts that forgive." She looked at him, her eyes full of tears. "She forgave us completely," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yes, and she taught us how to forgive ourselves, too." That evening, they lit a small candle near her photo. The flame flickered softly, reflecting in their eyes. The son spoke quietly. "You were right, Ma. Silence doesn't heal. Love does." His wife placed a flower beside the photo. "We'll keep your lessons alive," she said softly. Every single day, they sat there for a long time, not saying much but feeling everything. The house, once broken by anger and pride, now stood strong in peace and memory. A few days later, the daughter-in-law began to read the letter again every morning. She would sit by the same window where her mother-in-law used to sit. Feeling the same soft sunlight on her face, sometimes she would whisper, "Good morning, Ma." And even though no voice replied, she always felt a warmth in the air, like the love that never truly left. The son, too, found strength in his mother's words. He worked harder, spoke softer, and loved deeper. When people asked about his mother, he would smile and say, "She still lives here," pointing to his heart. The letter became their reminder that forgiveness is stronger than anger, that love can outlive pain, and that truth, no matter how late, can still heal a home. And in that quiet little house, where so many tears had once fallen, peace stayed, not as a guest, but as family.